Hello there. Welcome to the Pretend GM Fantasy Football Show presented by Football Guys. I am Alfredo Brown. Today we are diving into a rookie one quarterback mock draft here for all you Dynasty rookie drafters. It's still rookie season, right? We're almost done with this, but this is where you really create the cornerstones of your Dynasty team for years to come. So we're going to be analyzing some of these landing spots, the prospect profiles, how we approach these rookie drafts with different strategies. And before we get started, I want to remind you guys, hit that like button. It's such a big deal for us. It's genuinely, this is our relationship, right? It is such a nice thing for you to do as a friend. You're watching this channel, hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel because we're going to be giving you so much more Dynasty content, rookie content, and we're going to be coming to you every single day. And then if you have questions about your rookie draft, your Dynasty team in general, just drop them in the comments below. And I personally get back to every single one of these. Okay. So drop your comments below and I'll get back to you. Joey, let's take a look here at round one of this rookie mock draft. And I don't think there's any surprises, right? At the first three picks, you take a look at the 101, Bijan Robinson, running back for the Falcons. At the 102, this was your draft slot. You took Jahmyr Gibbs, running back for the Lions. And at the 103, we see Jackson Smith-Njigba, wide receiver for the Seahawks. And we don't have to really talk about Bijan. I think that's everyone gets that. But I'd say most people would take Jahmyr Gibbs here, just like you did, over Jackson Smith-Njigba. But I think there's a case here to be made where you start to talk about, okay, Jahmyr Gibbs is an undersized running back. Running backs don't tend to last long. He's going to be sharing a backfield with David Montgomery. This is a pass first team. And I get it. He has a passing skill set. So how do you really get to that thought process where you're saying, I'm going to take this running back who would really need to be considered an outlier to provide value at the 102 over a Jackson Smith-Njigba, who has that potential to be a target hog? I think there's warts for both these guys, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, with JSN, it's a bit of a clouded receiving room right now. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. And you could say that the backfield's kind of crowded for Detroit as well against Gibbs, but I don't really know if it is. I think the deficiency of the Lions last year was using their running backs as pass catchers. And yeah, they had DeAndre Swift, but for some reason it just didn't work out. And I think Gibbs fits that role perfectly. They only targeted their running backs with the 19.5% of the target share last year. And that's all their running backs together. And that just seems a little low. And I think this could be the next thing to unlock that Lions offense with Jahmyr Gibbs. And that's honestly why I'm taking him above JSN.
Yeah, what it seems like is that more than anything, Jahmyr Gibbs is that player that the Lions always wanted DeAndre Swift to be. And there's so much more that goes into fantasy football that we as analysts or even the players who play in these leagues, we can't comprehend because it's stuff that goes beyond data. It's intangible things, right? That you see with a coaching staff, a general management staff, that goes into this. And there's relationships. These are people. And something just did not click between the Lions and DeAndre Swift. And so you almost start to wonder, is it a tendency thing that they don't want to do it? Or is it just that they just did not want to use DeAndre Swift in that way? Because I don't think that you invest such a high pick in a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs unless you really want to use him that way. Is that kind of your thought process here?
Absolutely. I mean, the Lions have come out and said, I don't know how much of this is fodder, but that they would have taken Gibbs at the 6, or that they liked Gibbs maybe a little bit more than Bijan. Now, I don't know if that's true. I think if Bijan and Gibbs were both there, I'm sure they probably would have taken Bijan. But, the Lions did like him, and they did use quite a bit of draft capital to bring him in. So, yeah, I think that they saw in him what they want out of their running back position, and they probably just didn't see that in Swift, like you said.
Yeah, that was one of those things. I remember seeing a video of Lions GM Brad Holmes talking about the two running backs, Bijan and Jahmyr, and he said, listen, Bijan's an incredible prospect, and he's one of those guys that's a bell cow back. And he said, specifically, that's not what we were looking for. We were looking for a guy that's going to be able to make dynamic plays and share a backfield, and that's what they got there with Jahmyr Gibbs. So I don't think anyone's going to argue with you on that pick there at 102 going with Jahmyr Gibbs.
Let's take a look. I don't like to argue with people, so.
You're such a sweet guy. Let's take a look at the next few picks here where we see 3 wide receivers go off the board. It's 104, it's Jordan Addison to the Vikings. At the 105, it's Quentin Johnston to the Chargers. And then at the 106, it is Zay Flowers to the Ravens. Now, out of these 3 receivers, I think I can confidently say that I was highest on Jordan Addison throughout the scouting process. I am still highest on Jordan Addison now as a pro. And I think he is most likely to produce early out of these 3 guys. Now, I don't know if you agree with that. If you do, I kind of want to know, who is the next wide receiver in this group that you think is most likely to produce early in their career? Because that is something that is very important. You don't typically see the year 3, year 4, year 5 breakouts anymore. Typically, if a rookie, if a player, a prospect, whatever you want to classify it as, is productive early in their career, they will maintain that production throughout their career and continue to ascend. So who's the guy that fits that mold for you here?
Yeah, I do agree with you. I'll say first on Addison, like he would be he wanted the 104, and I agree with that completely. Yeah. The next guy for me, though, even though I'm not drafting him, like I would draft Johnston over Zay Flowers, but I think early success in the career, I see Zay Flowers succeeding a little quicker than I do Johnston. I think Johnston's got a lot to learn still. He's got that big body, but he needs to learn how to use it correctly. I think he's on the right team to learn that, but Zay Flowers can come right in and I think become the wide receiver 1 on the Ravens. You've got Rashad Bateman there, but he's coming off a foot injury. And there are people that are high on Rashad Bateman. I am not one of them. I think he's a bit unproven. If you look at his career stats, it's just not really there. When he's been on the field, he's looked good, but he's had some trouble staying on the field. So I think Zay Flowers could pretty easily win that wide receiver 1 role. I won't say the most targeted player because I still feel like that's Mark Andrews. But as far as the wide receiver 1, I could easily see that being Zay Flowers with the Ravens.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot that's going to be added to these two offenses, the Chargers and the Ravens. Like we talk about the Vikings and Jordan Addison, that offense already passes a lot with KOC, with Kevin O'Connell running the show over there. And, Kirk Cousins is willing to air that ball out. And so Jordan Addison's going to go into a good spot. But these other two players, Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, they're going to be going into offenses that are basically getting revamped to pass the ball a bit more. They both have MVP caliber quarterbacks. I mean, Lamar's the one that's actually done it. Herbert has not been there. But yeah, if you look at this thing in a vacuum, I'd agree with you. Zay Flowers has probably the easier path to being the wide receiver 1 on his team. You've got I say old, but we're about the same age, older Odell Beckham Jr., who's coming off of, the knee injuries. You've got Rashad Bateman, who still hasn't shown that he can play a full season, right? And he hasn't quite broken out yet either. The Mark Andrews thing is very apparent. And but to me, the Mark Andrews is kind of like how the Chargers have Austin Eckler, where those high targets, they should cancel each other out, right? Where you're looking at, they may not be the highest target receivers on the team, target getters on the team, but they do have an opportunity to be the highest targeted receivers. And that's where Zay Flowers, I think, kind of works into that for the Ravens. It's going to be really interesting to see where those offenses go. They're going to be more pass heavy. Where I think I lean towards Zay Flowers is the fact that Zay has a bit more versatility. He can play in that slot. He can play out wide. He can play on the move. He's going to be used in types of gadget roles where he's going to get those little quick touch passes. He's going to be getting screens, and I don't think that's how Quentin Johnston is going to be used in this Chargers offense. So, I think I tend to lean with you there early on in the career, being Zay Flowers, but Quentin Johnston is kind of putting all your money on red, and let's see if it cashes out down the line. So let's take a look at these next two picks, and this is where things start to get a little dicey here in these rookie mock drafts. And at the 107, we see Anthony Richardson, quarterback for the Colts, come off the board, and the 108, Dalton Kincaid, tight end for the Bills. Now this range seems to be where people start to consider other positions that are not running back and wide receiver. It's seen like these are, for all intents and purposes, especially in a one quarterback league, premium positions. You typically don't invest early in these. So is it really worth it with these prospects to take the, let's call it the calculated risk on using these picks at 7 and 8 on these type of luxury premium positions with Anthony Richardson and Dalton Kincaid?
It's weird because normally I would say no, but I do feel like in both cases, the Colts and the Bills kind of tailor their offenses, not towards these picks, but these picks suit the spots that are open on those offenses. You look at the Colts with Shane Steichen. Look what he did with Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert and how he fostered them. He's the perfect coach for Anthony Richardson to succeed. So I love that where'd he go with the 107? Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. 107. Yeah. I'll take that every day. And with Dalton Kincaid, this Bills team really does still kind of lack a true wide receiver too. And I'm not saying that Kincaid's going to be that. I'm just saying the workload will be there for him to be a successful tight end. So I don't normally like drafting rookie tight ends. Outside of Kyle Pitts, I'm not sure many have succeeded in the last few years. But this is a situation where if they use him kind of like a slot receiver, I could really see it working for Dalton Kincaid in Buffalo.
Joey, you thought that the Oakland Grizzlies fans were really getting up in your mentions. The Gabe Davis stands are going to be all over you for saying that the Bills don't have a wide receiver 2 yet.
Listen, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the show. He is my daughter's preschool teacher. It's her nephew is Gabe Davis.
Wait, hold on. We have to go back on because the way this started, it sounds like Gabe Davis teaches your daughter.
No, it's his aunt that teaches my daughter.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
cool. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Look at that.
So
60
he went to
days of separation.
UCF, so he's like, he's local. So I guess he's come into the daycare once, but I'm not allowed
Did
to
you
be with
tell
him
him
like
then that he's
100
not the wide
yards.
receiver too?
No, I did. So how I found out about Gabe Davis being the nephew is I made a comment to a Jets fan that was sitting at the desk. We talk fantasy football every day when I drop my daughter off for about 5 minutes. And I made some comment about Gabe Davis, and his aunt wasn't behind the table, but one of the other workers does. And like, don't let Henrietta hear you say that. And I was like, why? What's up? Is she a Bills fan? They're like, no, Gabe Davis is her nephew. I was like, ooh. So now I got to watch my mouth when I walk
Immediately, just you did the Homer Simpson back up into the leaves.
yeah, into
I'm
the
out.
leaves. Yeah. Yeah, I think he's like, yeah, I took Gabe Davis as my like wide receiver 3, and I was like, he's gonna bust this year. And then it was all downhill from there. So now I have to be nice with whatever I say about him.
Next time you go in there, just man, wide receiver 1 season, Gabe Davis, let's go, taking him top 10. Let's get it. So back to this rookie draft here. Like, I think this is where you start to see. No, you're good. You're good. So I think this is where you start to see that things really change, right? Like, I think those top 6 players, whatever order you have them in, are kind of locked into that. But then this is where you start to, we talk about these players being in tiers, right? And I think that's the biggest thing is you start to look at what is around these other prospects. And it's, do I really want to then take a Zach Charbonnet, a Devon A-Chain, Jonathan Mingo, Kendre Miller? Like, is the upside with those players the same as the upside of taking this incredible rushing threat in Anthony Richardson at quarterback, or Dalton Kincaid, this very athletic, very capable receiving tight end who can play in the slot? And so you start to take these calculated risks where you're saying, I'm willing to take these guys at the top of this tier. But one of the things that we do look at, though, talk about these tiers, is being able to get the last players in a certain tier, right? And I think this is where we start to close this out here at the end of this round 1, where you see the guys I mentioned. Zach Charbonnet goes to 109, Devon A-Chain at the 110, Jonathan Mingo at the 111, and then Kendre Miller was my pick at the 112. And this group seems like everyone comes with their rewards, right? Zach Charbonnet is sharing a backfield with Ken Walker. Devon A-Chain, undersized, may not get the touches we want in Miami. Kendre Miller, not much of a pass catcher, even though he says he can do it, and the Saints say they want him to do it. He's got a very similar skill set to a running back that's already there in Jamal Williams. Jonathan Mingo has a lot to learn, and it's gonna be interesting to see how that offense even pans out, because that could take some time. With this, is there a player that you kind of target at the end of this round where you say, I'm comfortable taking him because that is the last good player in this tier?
If I could take one of these players out of the 4 we just mentioned with Charbonnet, A-Chain, Mingo, and Miller, I'm taking A-Chain, because I think he's the one that has the possibility of the most success in season 1 and going forth. Like, for a job, like if you look at Charbonnet, like I really best case scenario see 50-50. And that's best case in getting the goal line work. That's all I see with him. With Mingo, yeah, he could be the wide receiver 1 for the Panthers, but I think it's going to take a little bit of development, especially with a rookie quarterback. And with Kendre Miller, I don't know if you mentioned or not, but he's very similar to Jamal Williams. And Jamal Williams is, I mean, he's still halfway to his 2,000 carry threshold, which is where most like high tier running backs kind of start to drop off. He's only had, I think it's 1,075 total touches in his career. So he's still, relatively young, even though he's in his 7th season. So for me with A-Chain, like you've got an older 31-year-old Raheem, I'm not going to do it again. With Mostert there and Jeff Wilson, like I think he has the clearest path to work.
Yeah, and you know what I think is interesting too is you start to notice is that where these tiers kind of break off is that it seems like the lottery ticket style picks are happening earlier in this draft than they have been in previous drafts. And the fact that, I mean, really, for all intents and purposes, at the 107, looking at Anthony Richardson is kind of your first real lottery ticket. So I think that's an interesting thing. Like if you are one of these single quarterback drafters that is, in that, let's say 9 to 12 range, you want to be trying to trade these picks, I would think, as soon as possible, right? Like not up in your draft where people can see, I'm guaranteed a Devon A-Chain or a Zach Charbonnet. Those picks all of a sudden become less valuable when you attach rookie names to it. But people love picks. It's like Bitcoin. They don't know what it's actually worth, but it's really trendy to have them, and it's really cool, and you want to have it because it sounds like it's going to be really, really expensive one day. Now, before we continue to go on here, I just want to let you guys know that you all have the opportunity to become an Elite Football Guys subscriber. And when you do that, you are going to have access to all of our awesome Dynasty content that we have here at Football Guys, including our trade value charts, premium research articles from all of the fantastic writers that we have here at Football Guys. You're also going to get custom in-season player projections, rankings, waiver wire reports, all the stuff that you need to be successful in your dynasty leagues. And on top of that, you're going to get our phenomenal draft dominator, the league dominator, all these things to help you set your lineups and tools that help you customize to your league, to your settings, to your preferences. And guess what? That's going to include rookie drafts. Okay. What we're talking about right now. So if you're trying to dominate your rookie drafts, trying to dominate your league, you need to become a Football Guys elite subscriber. And it's actually the most affordable subscription in all of the fantasy football industry. So go check it out at footballguys.com and become an elite subscriber today. Joey, we're going to move on here to round 2, where these are a lot of the names. I think round 2 can change anywhere from the 201 all the way down to the very end of this round, where you can make arguments for any of these players going anywhere. It is such a mess. Let's take a look at this early round 2 where Michael Mayer comes off the board, tight end for the Raiders at the 201. That was a little bit surprising to me. And at the 202, you took one of my favorite players, Josh Downs, wide receiver for the Colts. And I think what's been so cool to hear about him is I was very high on Josh Downs. I was really disappointed to see where he fell in the draft. But now hearing the talk from Colts assistant coach, Reggie Wayne, former wide receiver for the Colts, he is absolutely in love with Josh Downs. And he mentioned him as the best wide receiver that was at the NFL Combine, which, I mean, that's big praise. And I think all these teams do that after they select a player. Oh, he was the best guy on our board. But you went with Josh Downs here. What went into that selection?
Yeah, if you look at what Shane Steichen did with Keenan Allen and Devonta Smith over the last 3 years, he kind of fits that role. Josh Downs is a very similar receiver to them, creating separation and hauling in contested catches. That's what Josh Downs does. I like him better than any of the other options, unless there was a Denver Broncos trade. I think then Marvin Mims would probably pop up ahead of him just due to workload. But that safety blanket for Anthony Richardson, I just love Josh Downs. And the fact that Anthony Richardson has been working out with him, and I know they should be working out together already, but they were before, immediately right after the draft. That gets me excited when two rookies want to work together. Maybe their career grows together. I like seeing that.
Yeah, you start to see those things. And I know that we don't want to travel down the narrative street too far, but when you start to see these rookies working together, it does matter. Like we saw George Pickens and Kenny Pickett last year, who, I mean, neither of them were particularly amazing, but there was an obvious connection there, and it became a detriment to a guy like Deontay Johnson. And, you start to wonder, how much is that relationship just going to continue to flourish? Rookie quarterbacks look for someone they can trust. And if Anthony Richardson is trusting Josh Downs, I absolutely love that early on in the career. Now, you mentioned a couple of these other receivers that went off the board here, and it's Marvin Mims, wide receiver for the Broncos, Jaden Reed, wide receiver for the Packers, and then Rashee Rice, the wide receiver for the Chiefs. Now, we had this run of wide receivers go here outside of Josh Downs. Okay, let's put this in a tier where we've got Michael Mayer and these three other receivers, Mims, Reed, and Rice. Who would you be going with if you are drafting a win now dynasty team? Who's going to give you the earliest production here?
Win now outside of Downs. Jaden Reed with the Packers really intrigues me. The Chiefs, I don't want to play roulette with the Chiefs. I don't want to try to guess who the wide receiver is going to be. It's just a tough game. Patrick Mahomes has already come out and said, last season, I'm going to go with a different guy every week. And listen, he just won the Super Bowl. I don't see him changing that strategy up very much. So I do like Jaden Reed. I did say Marvin Mims. I would want to see the Broncos made a trade for him to move up, but Town eventually will win out. I just don't think in the first season, with Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, that talent might win out to a bigger degree. And Tim Patrick is still there. So yeah, it'd probably be Jaden Reed for me. I do like him with the Packers. Jordan Love kind of leaning on him a little bit in the similar way that Anthony Richardson is probably going to lean on Josh Downs.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of not only Jaden Reed, but Marvin Mims as well. So Downs, Mims, Reed, those are guys that I would be comfortable taking here from the 201 through 203. And I think that there are even times where I think depending on how your team makeup is, you could make arguments that any one of those receivers should maybe go where Jonathan Mingo did at the 111. The landscape changes so much when you go into single quarterback drafts, because these are guys that you could be getting at the end of the second in a super flex draft. And things they really start to change when you get into a new format here. Joey, let's take a look at what happened next, because at the 206, we see Tank Bigsby, running back for the Jaguars, come off the board. Then we've got Roshan Johnson at the 207, running back for the Bears. 208 was Tyjae Spears, running back for the Titans. 209, Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver for the Giants. And then we start to see some of those premium positions come off the board again. CJ Stroud at the 210, Sam Laporta at the 211, and then Bryce Young was my pick at the 212, which honestly, I was shocked to see Bryce Young fall there. So CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, they fall later in here. And we talk about these being premium positions. And when do you decide to take them? These are guys that are all going top 5 in Superflex drafts. When we get to single quarterback drafts, if these guys fall to the 210, 212, are they just like you absolutely have to draft them? Should they maybe even be going earlier? Are these kind of the steals at these picks?
I think CJ Stroud went about where I would be comfortable taking him, maybe a little bit higher, maybe like at the 209. And when I say a little bit higher, literally one spot. Bryce Young falling to the end of the second, like I would have taken him at the 207 above Roschon Johnson. Like I think that he has the talent to succeed in Carolina. It's just going to take a little bit longer than maybe Anthony Richardson is. And the upside with Anthony Richardson doesn't exist there with the Bryce Young as much the way I see it. But yeah, I think that's the pick of the draft. When you look at this whole draft board, Bryce Young at the 212, like, and you getting it makes me even happier because I know you love Bryce Young. But that's the only one that the value seemed a little off to me. But CJ Stroud at the 210. Okay. And CJ Stroud was someone I was really high on. I just really don't like that situation. I don't think Houston's really done this offseason much to give me confidence that they want to see him grow in season 1. I think it's going to be down the road a little bit for him.
Yeah, that one surprised me too, is to see CJ Stroud go ahead of Bryce Young. Especially so given the format, right? Like things change if you're going from super flex to single quarterback. And I think in single quarterback, you want that guy who is more likely to be the outlier and have the big blow up games, because you want someone who's going to be a bit different than the field. Right. And so I mentioned Justin Fields, right? Like that was a guy who last year was a big outlier that despite not maybe having the passing numbers you wanted, he gave you that rushing ability. And that's what you see is you see all these quarterbacks at the top of their game. Like they were the ones that really separated themselves from the pack. So you don't necessarily want there's no shot at these guys, but you don't necessarily desire the Kirk Cousins and the Derek Carrs and the Jimmy G's and the guys that like they're good NFL quarterbacks, but they don't provide that fantasy outlier. I don't know that any of these guys outside of Anthony Richardson is going to do that. But if you're going to take shots on guys that could do it, Bryce Young seems like one of those guys, whether you know the skill set of the escapability, the high-powered offenses that he has led despite not having the great prospects over at Alabama, which is weird to say. He seems like the guy that could be able to do that here at the next level. I want to point out another one really quick, Joey, and I want to get your opinion on this. Sam Laporta going 10 spots later than Michael Mayer is just weird to me. I rank Sam Laporta higher than Michael Mayer in my prospect, deep dive there. And Sam Laporta, I think he ends up on a great situation where he can produce in year 1. And he's got the athletic profile to be a producer throughout his career. Him going here at the end of the second seems like an absolute steal. I don't personally understand that doing Laporta so much later than Michael Mayer. I think you can make arguments, but going so much later, how did that one stand out to you?
I would take Laporta over Mayer. I don't want to be rude, but I think the Mayer was a reach. I think whoever took him must like him. And you know what? Fantasy's fun. Take the guys you like if you like someone. Like do that. No one can ever argue against that because that's a feeling. And you want to have fun when you play fantasy. But if you want to win, no, kidding. I do like Sam Laporta. And you say he could start producing year 1. How about week 1? With Jameson Williams not on the field for the first 6 weeks. And that slot position for the Lions has been a little up in the air. You know, Laporta, I think he could easily outplay Brock Wright. I know I've slandered Brock Wright's name on the show twice now, but there's just a huge tier break between the tight ends there in Detroit. And I do like Laporta a lot.
Well, Joey, we hit our first 2 rounds here, and that's going to be it for us today. If you want to check out the rest of this, head on over to the audio version of this show, the podcast, where we're going to go through rounds 3 and 4 and give you the full scope of all 48 picks. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and then click the videos to the side here, and that'll take you to our next great rookie or dynasty content that we have here on the Football Guys YouTube channel.